G'day BookTube, you're here with Nick, the Renaissance Bookman, and today we are going to be tier ranking every single book that I read in 2025. I've read 40 books this year, and I'm going to give you my spoiler-free reviews of every single one, and then I'm going to rank them from S tier down to D tier. And 2025 has been an amazing reading year for me. This was the first year in a long time that I gave myself permission to read for enjoyment. And boy, did I read for enjoyment. The amount of lit RPG that you can see on my shelves behind me tells you how much that I've been pleasure reading. But this has been an amazing reading year, and I've got 40 books to get through. So let's dive straight in. The first book we're going to review is Circe by Madeline Miller, and this is in the myth or fantasy genre. For anyone that is familiar with Homer's epic stories, we're talking the Iliad and the Odyssey. If you've read the Odyssey, then you have already come across Circe. Two of the books out of the 24-ish books that make up the book The Odyssey are dedicated to the witch Circe. She lives alone on an island. She's been cast out from her more successful, more powerful god family, and she is cast aside, ostracized on this island, where she is able to craft and hone her skills in witchcraft. In the Odyssey, Odysseus or Ulysses and his men end up finding their way to her island. And what Madeline Miller has done is gone and created a really believable, really heartfelt backstory to this minor goddess. And we follow along on her story. I have a little confession to make. I almost didn't read this book. At the very beginning of this, you've got the letter from the author to the reader. And in it, Madeline Miller said two things. The first one I wasn't too fussed about, but it was the second thing that almost turned me off. The first thing she said is that she is a staunch feminist and that this book was going to be an expose into feminism. I was like, yeah, cool. Okay, I'm cool with that. But the second thing she said is, and I'm going to explore that through witchcraft. And for whatever reason, I just didn't have a very good response to that. I almost closed the book then and there, put it on the shelf and picked up another book. I stewed on it for about a couple of hours, about 4 hours, and then I realized if that's the type of response that I'm having, then that shows a lot about some of my biases. This is exactly the kind of book that I have to read to explore those and to challenge myself. And so that's exactly what I did. And I don't regret it at all. This was actually a really, really good book. I've always been a fan of ancient history and the mythology and all the tales and stories that come along with that. And this was no different to any of those. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I enjoyed the fact that it was going to be an expose into feminism. I have a 5-year-old daughter and I want to bring her into a world where she is not disadvantaged in any way, where she can look at things and be like, I can get after that irrespective of my gender. I can go and do these things. I feel safe walking anywhere that I want to. And I know that feminism is a really important part about making that world a reality for my daughter. I'll be honest though, I was then a little bit disappointed in some of the stereotypes that Madeline Miller still used. What I love about fantasy or fictional writing is that you can create whatever world you want. You're not fixed by known biases or stereotypes or common tropes. You can create whatever world you want. And I was ready for Madeline to do that, but she still lent into a whole bunch of the stereotypes. And I guess that's the story that she was telling. You've got Circe, who is powerless in comparison to her father, the sun god Helios. And the unique aspect to witchcraft is that you have to hustle. You have to grind. You have to get your hands dirty and work at something. It's not this God-given ability. Despite all these disadvantages, despite being stepped on and abused by everyone that comes before her, she was still able to discover who she was as a person or as a goddess. She was able to grind and become fearsome and ferocious and loyal and powerful, all in her own right, despite the disadvantages that she had to face. And I guess that's the story that Madeline was exploring and celebrating that female character rising up. I was thinking we were going to do something slightly different, but I guess Madeline told a different story. And ultimately, I really quite liked it. This was all first person from Circe's point of view, and it dealt heavily in terms of her interiority. Is that the right phrasing? Basically, what I'm saying there is that most of it wasn't this action-orientated, plot-driven story. It was one-page action-orientated, plot-driven story, 3 pages in a monologue, 3 pages of her coming to terms with what's just occurred, exploring her emotions and her response to it, overcoming her biases and overcoming her fears. It was a different story to what I've read a lot of, but it worked for me. So let's actually rank this. If I can get this to work, here we go. This was A tier to me. Where it's going to fit on that entire spectrum, I don't know. We'll have to throw a few more books into the A tier. But Circe by Madeline Miller, A tier. The second book we're going to look at is Rubicon by Tom Holland, and this is in the history genre. Tom Holland's Rubicon, we look at the final years of the Roman Republic as it transitions to the Roman Empire. Think of Pompey, think of Cicero, think of Crassus, and importantly, think of Julius Caesar. This is their story, and Holland is not your stereotypical historian. It's not dry and bland, just facts and facts and facts. He creates this beautiful little story arc to go along with it. This is far more like a HBO TV series than it is a history textbook. Now, that won't be everybody's jam, and I fully appreciate that. As I was reading, I was like, no, I want to know more about that person, these random side characters that got introduced. And so I was constantly having to jump on Google and look up these other characters. So it wasn't perfect. It wasn't a perfect book, but it was really accessible. If you want to know more about that time period, if you want to learn more about Caesar and the ways in which that he came to seize power, and the way that the Roman Republic just crumbled from within, not due to an external force, but internal to the nation, then this would be a really good introduction for you in doing that. It's really approachable. It's really readable because of that story arc that Tom Holland creates. It was good, but not perfect. So where are we going to put this one? Tom Holland, this came down as B tier for me. I really liked a lot of what he had on offer, and I loved if you look at some of the big, massive nations that we've got around in the world where we're freely giving, or at least giving more and more power to individuals, that's exactly what Caesar did. When he crossed the Rubicon, he declared civil war and ultimately took power by force, destroyed democracy as they knew it to put himself on the throne as dictator. Now, that didn't end up particularly well for him in a subsequent Senate hearing, but I find so many similarities with what we're seeing in massive countries around the world in terms of China, Russia, and dare I say, the United States, where we are freely giving individuals more power than they've ever held before. It's a slippery slope. And I enjoyed that parallel that I was able to draw from reading Tom Holland's work this year. So it was good, but not perfect. Why? Because I was after a little bit more depth every now and then. The next book we're going to do, this is an exciting one. This is Red Rising by Pierce Brown, and this is in the science fiction genre. This is The Hunger Games meets Gladiator with a bit of the Iliad thrown in for good measure. Now, a lot of people will get upset that I've compared it to The Hunger Games, but ultimately it's got that same gamification where you put people in this fictitious gaming environment, battle royale style, and you have these other people that are able to bestow gifts and benefactor boxes upon them and increase their odds. And ultimately it's a performance. You can't just kill, you have to kill well to impress those that are actually going to be grading you. But that's the subplot, really. That's merely the means through which we get to explore the actual storyline. So in this sci-fi novel, what Pierce Brown has created, it all follows Darrow. Darrow is a red. We have this color-based caste system where each color has a particular lot in life, essentially. Red, they are the lowest of lows. These guys are working underground within Mars, mining a particular mineral as such to help terraform Mars on the surface. To what they know, that's what they're trying to achieve. Ultimately, that's not what's taking place. These guys are slaves to the gold elite that sit at the top of that pyramid. And Mars has been terraformed for a very long time. They're living prosperously, not only on Mars, but on every planet throughout the solar system. And none of the Reds know this. So one thing happens, and then Darrow eventually discovers this, and then he goes undercover. He becomes a gold and goes undercover, trying to tear down society as we know it from within. He is an angry man, and it is so enjoyable watching him go on this vengeance tour. He's after revenge, and he just wants to tear people apart. When I said this is got like a bit of the Iliad in it, he is either Achilles or Odysseus. He jumps between the two. Pierce Brown is also an absolute master at these one-liners. One that we've got right from the start of the book, the very first words, "I would have lived in peace, but my enemies brought me war." That just sets up the entire story from the very first sentence. And Pierce Brown just has all of these little one-liners time and time again. Another one that I really liked is, "I am the Reaper and my shadow is death." Did I mention that this is a testosterone-fueled, brutal exploration of masculinity, rage, and conflict? Yeah, it's absolutely awesome. This book will put hairs on your chest. It's the first book in what ultimately ends up becoming, I think 7 is where we're going to get to, with Red God being released either hopefully this year or next year, probably next year by the time we get to it. I've read the first 3. I'm going to read the next 3 this coming year, and hopefully that rolls straight into Red God as well. But Red Rising, you can see what's happening from here. Darrow's the red. He's rising on up. Where does this rank, though? This is going to be a little bit contentious for people because ultimately I'm putting this one in A tier. Red Rising is a terrific book, but it's just not perfect. What isn't perfect about it? I think there's probably not lazy writing, but at least one too many of the same thing. And what I'm talking about is you can actually tell me that a character is morally corrupt and is the bad guy without them resorting to sexual assault every single time. I think there's 3 instances where the bad guy ends up sexually assaulting or sexually harassing someone. And it's like, no, you can do more than that. I appreciate that could have been one instance, but when you come back to it 3 times, I'm like, you left something on the table there. You could have done this in a slightly more intellectual way. I think Pierce Brown's writing gets better from Golden Sun and into Morningstar. So don't let that hold you back. That's just why it creeps into A tier and why it's not sitting in S tier. The next book that we're going to do, though, is Golden Sun by Pierce Brown, and this is in the sci-fi genre. Book 1 is all within that fictitious institute that we have created, and what happens immediately in book 2 is you step out of that institute and you have the entire solar system available to you. The scale increases, the scope of the story increases. You've got mainly the same characters, you get other characters thrown in, and the new characters thrown in are awesome, right? You've still got Darrow that you absolutely love. You've got Mustang who you love. Cassius is there and around and you love and you hate him. You love and you hate Darrow at times as well. And Severo is there. You're both equal parts disgusted and in love with Severo every single time this man talks. Oh, he is just, well, he is crude, he is rude, he is crass, and he is as loyal as all get out. And I love Severo. Severo is one of my all-time favorite characters. And this book in particular, Golden Sun, is what I would call peak Severo. It's also peak Darrow, I'll say that much, from what I've read. And these are just great characters. Lorne comes into this one as well, Lorne Arcos, and he is home to one of my favorite scenes in this book as well. Skip ahead 30 seconds if you don't want me to talk about it. But Darrow finds himself surrounded by a bunch of his enemies and he's walking through the crowd. Lorne then says, if anyone gets within 2 meters of Darrow, I will kill every single person in this room. And what I love is everyone believes him. There isn't a, oh, what a bluff at 40-1. You're kidding yourself, old man. It's a, oh no, this dude will do it as well. And he is capable. And what I loved, here's the little spoiler. There's a guy that runs through the crowd to get to Darrow. And there's someone else in the crowd grabs a sword and stabs the dude in the heart. And then he falls forward, getting close to Darrow. And everyone just sort of freezes and looks across at Lorne. And Lorne just casually says, 2.1 meters. It's a great little scene. I loved the imagery and I loved the power that Lorne has in that moment. There's also another scene, which is probably the best single scene that I have read all of this year. I was going to say of all time that there's some scenes in The Lord of the Rings with Sam that will forever sit on top of that podium for me. But this got darn close, but for different reasons. And it's the gala scene. If you know, then you absolutely know. This is an all-time classic scene. The control that Darrow has as he steps through this, it's absolutely awesome. So you can summarize it in a single quote. I've just found it here and it says, my name, gentle lords and ladies, is Darrow Aldronimus. My honor has been pissed upon, and I demand satisfaction. It's just great. Did I mention that these books are going to put hair on your chest? This is another example of it. It's amazing. The sword fighting is just epic. The battle scenes are really well described. You feel like you're there. The Iron Rain is a really cool thing. The inter-space warfare that occurs is really cool. There are betrayals galore. That is the thing that's going to make you're going to love this book and you're going to hate this book. Every moment that you find Darrow takes a step forward in terms of what he's trying to achieve, someone betrays him. And it's 2 steps back. Just as you learn to love this character, they go and do something. And all of a sudden that just rips your heart out every single time. Oh, it's a great book though. As much as I say that, this is a terrific book. If anyone has read the 5 best books that I read this year, you'll understand where this one ranks. So there's no hiding that. This goes straight to S tier for me. The 3rd book in this series, and the next one we're going to look at, is Morningstar by Pierce Brown, and this is in the science fiction genre. So this one picks up right where Golden Sun ends. I can't tell you where Golden Sun ends, and therefore I can't really speak much to what is occurring in Morningstar. Just know that it puts a lovely bow around this. The final 150 pages were truly shocked. Like, I had moments where particular can I say that? Yeah, sure. Particular characters died in like 150, 200 pages to go. And I was like, I was not expecting that. Pierce Brown kills main characters just like George R. R. Martin does. And it really rips your heart out. God, you hate it. You're really upset. But this is a terrific book. Again, let's go straight into it. This is S tier for me. And ultimately, it's not as good as Golden Sun. Why? Because Golden Sun for me was peak Darrow, peak Severo. Not necessarily that they're at the peak of their powers, but in terms of what I liked in them as characters, these guys were amazing. Severo goes through a slightly different story arc in the third book, and that all makes sense in the context of when you get there. And that's still worthwhile. That's a really cool character arc that he goes through. But I absolutely loved him in book 2. The loyalty that he shows in book 2. I just want a Severo in my life, someone who I can just bounce ideas off, keeps you grounded, keeps you humble, and just a bit of comedic relief as well. But these were an amazing 3 books. The next book we're going to look at is Strategy by Lawrence Freedman, and this is in the non-fiction genre. I did a course around strategy earlier in the year, and so I was like, no worries, I'm going to get the granddaddy of strategy books. Lawrence Freedman takes us from biblical times all the way through the Renaissance era into modern warfare in World War I and World War II, onto modern day political thinkers and maneuverings that you see in modern day politics. And he looks at the strategy that people employed throughout that entire time. This is a big book. This is dense, and it's a little too dry. Where Tom Holland created this story arc and it felt like you were watching a HBO series or a Netflix series, we have not done that with Lawrence Freedman's book, but it's pretty epic. I'll be honest, I can find myself going back to certain chapters because it's very, very clearly delineated. There's no common themes that's drawing a single theme and you jumping around the history of that theme. It's in this time period, this is the context and this is what the people thought. This was the best strategy at the time. New time period, this was the best strategy at the time and this is why. And so you could flick forward a little bit. And there were a few chapters where I'm like, no, it's not really doing it for me. And so I was able to just like, yep, speed reading, still talking about that person. And yep, I've gained everything I think I need to know about the strategy from that time period. Oh, look at that. I'm 50 pages on. You can skip 50 pages here and not feel like you've missed much. And both a good thing and a bad thing. But I know that I'm going to be reading a little bit about Napoleon in this next 12 months. And so as I'm reading a memoir or a biography about Napoleon, I think I'm going to come back to Lawrence Freedman's strategy book and supplement what I'm reading there. The heavily biased books that you can get when someone's giving a straight out biography. And you can come back and you can read a little bit more of a textbook around the strategy of Napoleon and the way that he used speed of action like no one else had done prior to that point and why he was so successful in the time. So that's the way I think I'm going to end up using this book. But ultimately, this was just a little dry. And I wanted Lawrence Freedman to tell me a little bit about what he thinks about strategy. And ultimately, he didn't do that. He just kind of regurgitated history to the point where if I had the time and effort, I could probably go and reproduce this book. In comparison, I couldn't do what Tom Holland does. And so for that reason, let's go and rank this now. Where have I got it? And so ultimately, this is going to sit in C tier. Highly educational and really quite engaging for those time periods that you're interested in, but ultimately a little too dry. The next book that we're going to do is The Magician's Nephew by C.S. Lewis. And this is in the fantasy genre. This is a children's story as well. So let's remember that. You get a lot of a breaking down of the fourth wall as C.S. Lewis speaks directly to you. Why? Because it's almost like he's put the book down and he looks around at the group of children he's got in the little circle looking at him as he reads them the story. So The Magician's Nephew was ultimately I think it was the 7th book that C.S. Lewis wrote, but it's the first one in chronological order. This follows 2 small children, Polly and Diggory, who are both manipulated by Diggory's crazy Uncle Andrew, to put on these magic rings, I believe they are, and travel between time and worlds. As they do this, they find themselves in Narnia on day 0, where Aslan sings Narnia into existence. Polly ends up being this beautiful little character as well. I love the strength that C.S. Lewis has in these young female characters, because the way that I've been reading these books is each night, my daughter and I jump into her bed. We get a little torchlight that I've got, and we read this bit of daddy-daughter time, and we read these books together. We read 1 chapter a night, or at least that's what we try and do. Dad gets a bit tired every now and then, and my daughter makes me feel terrible about it, but it's really beautiful. We get to explore these beautiful magical worlds. C.S. Lewis is so poetic in the way that he describes things. He's an absolute master. And it's got these real heavy sort of biblical themes. So we can extrapolate that and get some really good moral teachings as we're reading these as well. And I love that Polly, just like Lucy is in the next one, these beautiful, really courageous little girls And my daughter loves them. Straight away, she gravitates towards the young female and she's like, oh, I just want to be like Polly. And so that's what I love about these books. Now, ultimately, this one is probably not the greatest of books. It was a little bit dry. It just didn't have as much action as what you would get from the other books. And so whilst it might be beautiful for my daughter, it didn't quite have as much for me as an adult reader coming to it. So let's just rank this one. The Magician's Nephew, this is going to be C tier. The next book is The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis in the fantasy genre. So this is the one that we all know. It's been made into movies. Everyone should probably have read this book. It's pretty epic. It is a classic for a reason. It is absolutely beautiful. It follows the 4 children, Peter, Susan, Edmund, and Lucy, as they discover Narnia. They go through the wardrobe. We discover beavers and fawns and Turkish delight and Santa Claus, and where it snows all the time, but it never becomes Christmas. We all know the story, and I really enjoyed reading this with my daughter as well. As I've just described, little Lucy is an amazing character. She's courageous, she's brave, she stands up to her older siblings when she knows she is right. She's got this beautiful forgiveness moment where she forgives Edmund for being an absolute turd of a brother. And I can use that as a teaching moment where I can show to my daughter, hey, when your brother does this to you, isn't that just like what Edmund's doing here? He's just stirring you, looking for a reaction. And isn't it beautiful in the way that Lucy forgives Edmund? And my daughter's like, yeah, but I don't want to forgive Jasp. And I'm like, okay, we'll work on that. Like, we'll keep reading. It's a really cool story. And let's just rank it. So this is A tier. Is it better than, ultimately, it's better than Circe. Why? It's just stood the test of time. It's a beautiful story and one that I will read time and time again with my daughter. I'm sure of it. The next one we've read is The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis, also in the fantasy genre. This is a distinctly different book. And the first thing that I'll say is the reading age between the first 2 that we've talked about and Horse and His Boy differs by like a solid 6 years. I had to check myself and be like, well, I'm a little bit tired to be reading this right now and reading it out loud. And so I had to spend a lot more time explaining to my daughter what different ideas were, different phrases were, different words were. And I had to look a few up. I was like, oh, I'll get back to you on that one. I have no idea what that word is. Just proves that C.S. Lewis is a master of the English language, and I am not. This is a standalone novel, very standalone. It's in the same time that Peter is High King, but we aren't really in Narnia. We follow Shasta, who is an orphan that was washed up, kind of Moses-esque, but not looked after by the royal family, rather just looked by a fisherman who really takes advantage of him. And he ends up running away with a horse that can talk. Why? Because the horse is from Narnia. And it's them on their way getting back to Narnia. Bree, the horse, is super relatable, really quite vain, and you see a lot of human traits explored through Bree. Bree's a really cool character to explore, and this is a good fun story. It's better than The Magician's Nephew, but does not get anywhere close to Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So naturally, let's slot it right in the middle and go from there. This is B tier for The Horse and His Boy. The next book we have is A Tale of Two Cities by Charles Dickens. This is a literary fiction, or let's just call it a classic, because that's exactly what it is. Charles Dickens is an absolute mastermind with the English language. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times. The opening line that has transcended time. It's still considered one of the best opening lines in all fiction, and it makes sense as to why. It doesn't just stop there. He crafts these sentences, which are absolutely magical, that you just sit back and you go, gosh darn it, I wish I could write that well. There's a reason why Dickens is still held with the high regard that he is today. The 2 cities that we're talking about is London and Paris. We're following Charles Darnay, who's the aristocrat trying to escape from that aristocratic past, or at least his standing, and become a self-sufficient man. You've also then got Sydney Carton. I think it's Sydney Carton, the cynical lawyer looking for redemption. And it's ultimately his redemption arc that genuinely made me cry. The person he was at the start of the book versus the end, the sacrifices he makes, and the person that he becomes. There's something in that for people that aren't all that pleased with the person they have been in the past. And we've all had those moments where we didn't live up to the standards we would like to set for ourselves. We've disappointed people, we've let people down, we've acted selfishly. Sydney is that person, and the redemption arc that he goes on there, it's really quite beautiful. It genuinely made me cry a little bit, and it's got one of the best endings to this book. The little twist that you get at the end is all time. It's classic, right? If you've never read Dickens, this could be a great book that you could read. The thing that he does, though, is he expects you to have an understanding of the time in which it was set, which is in the French Revolution. He'll name drop things and continue to moving on, and I'll be like, I feel like I missed something there. And then you go and Google it, and you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. That makes a heck of a lot of sense. Little Easter eggs littered throughout. The daughter in this one that drops absolutely everything to look after her father. She frustrated me because she's just so good. She's so honorable. And I wish I could be more like her, but I'm just not. I'm a little bit too selfish, too self-centered to be as honorable as what she is. But mind you, I think we all are. She was a little bit Mary Sue, and so I got a little bit frustrated with her. Ultimately, this is a beautiful book. Not most of it, solid 30% of it goes over my head. I'm just simply not smart enough. I'm going to keep reading classics. I'll jump into a few of the others in this next year and see if I can slowly just increase my reading capacity a little bit. But until then, I will just enjoy the 70% that I do understand, and I can recognize even from that 70% that this is A tier. So let's plonk it right in there. I'm going to put it on the back end of that because I didn't get as much out of it as what I did from some of these other more modern stories. And that has more to do with me, not Dickens or not this story. So if you've got this rated in an S tier, congratulations, you're smarter than me. If you've got this in C tier, okay, you're 12 months behind me. You'll get to where I am soon. And that's all that it comes down to. Next book we've got is The Dog Stars by Peter Heller. And this is a post-apocalyptic fictional novel. Ultimately, though, this is literary fiction. I've talked a bit about this book on the channel. This was a really cool book that I discovered from a book recommendation when I was at the Newcastle Writers Festival early in 2025. Someone name dropped this book as one that they were reading and really enjoying. And I was like, if it's good enough for you, Marcus Suzak, good enough for me. I'm going to go and read this book as well. Took me a little bit of time to get to it. I read it on my Christmas holidays, and it was good. Okay, it was good. Anyone who likes Cormac McCarthy's literary writing style, you're going to love Peter Heller. Does a very similar writing prose. These short, sharp sentences, you're getting that interiority. I'm going to keep rolling with that word. I think that's the right phrasing, where you've got someone's thoughts. But this person here is just dealing with so much stress, so much doubt as well. And so he's going through a scenario of something, and all of a sudden it snaps back and he's thinking about his late wife and he's talking through it. And I saw someone who is experiencing stress, and it was believable, and it totally made sense. It creates a very haphazard reading journey, but it makes so much sense when you sit back and look at a page altogether rather than an individual sentence, because a whole bunch of times an individual sentence just stops. And if it makes sense, right? You've had those thoughts where you're halfway through and then you get distracted thinking about something else. That's exactly the way that Peter Heller writes it. And that's what's going on in Higgs' life. So I've told you a whole bunch about the writing style and the prose, haven't told you what's going on. Imagine a world in which 99% of the world's population has died from a supervirus, and you're now trying to pick up the pieces and survive in what's left. Industry is broken down. Everything's broken down. People are fearful. People are shooting each other on sight because they're afraid that you might have this illness, or that you're just going to rob and steal and take their belongings along with them. And so we've got Higgs' dog, Jasper, and his mate, can't even think of his mate, oh my goodness. One of his neighbors, essentially, who's a bit of a gun nut, living on an airstrip just north of Denver, Colorado. And Higgs is a pilot, and he's getting around in his Cessna 182, and he's able to do scouting trips flying around. So instead of being like The Road, Cormac McCarthy's Road, pushing around a shopping trolley, he gets to fly around a Cessna 182, which is a much cooler mode of transport, I will say. But it's a really cool exploration of love, of despair, of how to survive when you've lost your purpose. I want to say Peter Heller has obviously read Nietzsche, because for he who has a why can bear almost any how. And that is something that we explore a heck of a lot through Higgs' stories. Everyone should read this. I don't see a lot of people talking about this, probably because it was like 2012 or whatever it was when Peter Heller first published this. If you like a mature theme, because we do touch on some mature themes here, suicide and euthanasia are definitely considered, which makes sense. If you've been essentially alone for 9 years, your mind's going to go to these places at times. But if you like some of those mature themes, but also having just a glass half full approach to it every now and then, this is a book for you. Let's do it. The Dog Stars by Peter Heller. This was thoroughly enjoyable. This was A tier for me, not as good as Red Rising. Just didn't have quite as much testosterone as what Red Rising did, but this is really cool. The next book we have is Mistborn, The Final Empire by Brandon Sanderson, and this is in the epic fantasy genre. Imagine a world where Voldemort actually won. And the book is set in a time where he is Lord Ruler, reigning supreme over all society. That is the setting that we find ourselves in Brandon Sanderson's first book in the Mistborn trilogy, where the Lord Ruler, the immortal Lord Ruler, has won, and the world is dark, it's grey. You've got this two-tier caste system where the nobles who are supported by the Lord Ruler are just lording it over the scar, the working class, who are just slaving away, trying to forge a living for themselves. This is the world that we find ourselves in. And we ultimately follow a young orphan living in the streets named Vin as she is brought into this motley crew of people led by the charismatic Kelsier as they try and achieve a heist to steal the source of the Lord Ruler's power. No small feat, right? You want to take down an immortal, essential demigod? Yeah, well, let's steal the thing that gives him his source of power. So it's this dark and gloomy world, and the magic system that Sanderson creates is super cool as well. It's a form of allomancy, where those that have this unique trait can swallow particular metals and then burn them, ingest them, and then burn them from within that give them special abilities. The really cool thing, though, there are really strict boundaries around Sanderson's magic system. He has fully embraced Newton's third law that every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. There are consequences to using this magic system. If you use pewter too long, which allows you like amazing endurance and strength, then if you use that for too long, then you like become comatose at the tail end of this. You're like, there is a tax to pay from using these metals. We get the name Mistborn because typically people can only burn one metal type. Mistborns can burn all of them. This was the first Sanderson book that I read, and it was really enjoyable. Vin as a character is totally believable. She's this underconfident thing, and she's trying to explore and trust and learn to live for more than just surviving, learning to live for a higher cause. And she's pulled along that journey by her mentor, Kelsier. Kelsier is this real charismatic figure, right? Really easy to get behind. For me, I like my charismatic figures. I appreciate that other people might not like that, but it works for me. Where are we going to rank this? This for me is S tier. I need to think long and hard where it sits, reference Morningstar. It's not as good as Golden Sun. Spoilers, Golden Sun was the single best book that I read all year. Now it's just trying to figure out exactly where some of these other S tier fit relative to each other. Mistborn was amazing. So let's jump straight into the second Mistborn book, The Well of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson, still in that epic fantasy genre. This book picks up right after where the first book finishes. You've got largely the same characters. You've got the same setting. You've got the same world building, the same magic system, but a very different feel. Where the first book was all heist orientated, this book is about political intrigue and political maneuvering. I can't talk about that much more without giving away what takes place in the first one. It's just a very different type of book, and ultimately not one that resonated with me nearly as much as what the first Mistborn book did. This is still really cool. And when you look at the Hero of Ages, the third book, and it illuminates what took place in the Well of Ascension becomes so much cooler. But as a standalone, as you're going to read the trilogy, book 2 is a step backwards for me. Why? Political intrigue didn't sell it to me nearly as much as the plot of the first book. I lost some of one of the new characters that we got, just didn't quite have the charisma of some of the characters that played a bigger role in the first one. And so that didn't resonate with me. And one of our other bad guys coming in here, Zane, one of the minor bad guys, I wanted more from Zane and I just never quite got it. And so that was a little bit of a letdown. What was really encouraging this one though is Vin. I loved Vin. I loved that as she became more powerful, started to understand who she was and blossom that little bit more. She ultimately still stayed the same person at her core, and I really liked that. She had this genuine compassion for one of her companions, I'll say it like that nobody else had. And I loved that. I wish I had that level of compassion just naturally to those around me. And so that was really cool to see and reflect upon myself and how I interact with people. And that was really beautiful. I really liked Vin. So let's rank this here. I've said that it wasn't nearly as good. And no, I'm sorry. This would be a bit of a hot take for some people here. But it's coming all the way down to B tier. Top of B. Don't get me wrong. This trilogy is amazing. But I have to rate it where it does. Top of B for Well of Ascension. The third book in the first Mistborn trilogy, because there's 2 trilogies. The third book is The Hero of Ages by Brandon Sanderson, and this is in that epic fantasy genre. The Hero of Ages was where I understood what everyone means when they say the Sanderlanche. Not an avalanche, but a Sanderlanche. The last 100 to 150 pages of this book is just amazing. It's so good. Sanderson is an absolute mastermind in the way that he crafts this plot, this story that he creates, where every little Easter egg along the way, every little side tangent, random conversation where you're like, oh, what was the go with that one? That didn't quite make sense. And then when you see it in the context of book 3, you're like, oh my goodness, You thought of that all the way back there? Like, the guy is an absolute genius. I totally understand why people would call Sanderson the modern day fantasy GOAT. He is that good. His magic systems are amazing. His worlds are really visual in what you can see. And the story is just super well crafted. Every sentence has a meaning, is what I'll say about Sanderson. It's just amazing. I really liked Vin. Vin continued to go from strength to strength for me in terms of a character. Spook came into his own, really liked his storyline, but none better for me in terms of character development than Circe. He grapples with love, with despair, with duty, and with doubt. And he has this crisis of faith that is just really believable. I know Sanderson is a man of faith. I can't think exactly what his faith is, but I have read that he is a man of faith. And I think he has undergone a similar crisis of faith because, geez, it felt believable. As I'm reading what Circe is going through, I'm like, I believe you. I feel what you're feeling based on the way that you're talking. He is on Mount Rushmore for me in terms of fictional characters. I really liked this guy. Well of Ascension was a step back for me, but Hero of Ages comes straight back up to S tier. That's how good this book was. And if you look at them as a full trilogy, they're S tier. So when I say Well of Ascension was only B tier for me, understand it in the context of just how good the other two books were. Now for a change of pace, we're going to look at Friday Black by Nana Kwame Ajay Brinya. And this is a collection of short stories. This is a very different type of book, where the others are fantastical and building these worlds and you're looking at destruction and rising up. This is a different story. This is a gut punch time and time again. It forces you to stop and check yourself. Where are my biases at? What would I be doing in this situation? Am I guilty of these similar sort of things? For anyone who likes Black Mirror, you will really like Friday Black. But it focuses so much more on social injustice or social identity and racial injustice would be a better way to describe that. Nana Kwame uses hyperbole to great effect. In one of his books, instead of just having someone be stabbed to death or shot, the person hacks them to death with a chainsaw. It's so visceral, so visual, you can't help but be shocked as a result of what you're reading. The exaggeration is used really well and forces you to check yourself. So what I really liked about this little collection of short stories is some were only 2 pages long. And the one that I'm thinking of, near on brought me to tears. There are others that are 25 pages. And not every single one of these short stories is a home run. There are some that I got to the end of and I was like, nah, just didn't really do anything for me. But that's okay, because the next one is only going to be 15 pages and it's going to make you stop. And you're going to have to sit there for an hour and think about yourself and think about the decisions that you've made in your life. So Nana Kwame is a terrific writer. I'm really looking forward to reading Chain Gang All-Stars, Chain Gang. Oh my goodness. I'm really looking forward to reading his other book, but let's rate this one. So as I said, some of the short stories were S tier. Others, though, were probably as bad as a D tier. It just didn't really do anything for me. I like exploring the downsides to capitalism, consumerism, but they didn't necessarily do as much for me as some of the social injustice and racial injustice storylines. So this is A tier, and I'm going to slide it all the way in here, just under The Dog Stars by Peter Heller, and that is a good spot for this book to be sitting. The next book we've got is Raising Lions by John Newman, and this is the parenting or self-help guide. So as I've said, I am a father of 2. I've got a 3-year-old boy and a 5, nearly 6-year-old daughter, and these guys are stubborn. They are ferocious little lions. My son more so than my daughter. She's at the age now where you can reason with her a little bit more and rationalize. My son, there's none of that. It's all just emotion. I don't know if testosterone is meant to hit a 3-year-old boy yet, but I feel like my son is already there. He might have been reading Red Rising in the background when I wasn't paying attention. I wanted a guide, a little bit of help in raising a lion. And so what Joe Newman does is he gets you to create an environment where you can build in consequences for your child. So for example, what have I actually got out of it? It's in the child can make the decision. That's okay. The child makes the choice. But if it's not the choice that's in line with your values and what you're trying to achieve, then it results in a break. A break, you might call it a timeout. We use the phrase break. And these breaks are early interventions and they're very short. We're not talking about a 2-minute, 3-minute, 5-minute break with a nose in the corner. It's I can see you getting excited there. Let's just have a quick little break. And it's a 10-second pause. Gives their brain an opportunity to catch up with where their emotions have got to. There's a whole lot more to it, but this was a really good book. My wife and I are doing it and we've found that it's really quite productive. Even if it's just as simple as having my wife and I on the same page, it's kind of working. There's so much merit to that. It doesn't really matter what system you're using, what methods you're using or parenting, as long as you are consistent and both parents are doing the same sort of thing at the same sort of levels and the same thresholds before they get to different points, you're probably going to have a good result. So is this book transcendent in what it does for parenting? Nah, probably not. But it's the one that's working for me. And I like the imagery about raising a lion. So let's rank this. Where do I want to put this one? So let's chuck this in B tier. It's not perfect, but it's good. If you're struggling as a parent, this could be another option for you. There are a whole bunch of videos and guides that go along with this on YouTube, so you could jump along and look at those before you go and buy this book from Amazon somewhere. Continuing on the exciting reads, next we have No Higher Priority by a whole bunch of people, and this is in the strategy or policy genre. I don't know what really genre to put this one. What is this book? This is a proposal. It's a set of 36 policy recommendations for the Australian government to pursue when it comes to our defence strategy. I was studying strategy earlier in the year, and this is the particular focus that I took. So what did I like about this book? Generally, I actually agreed with a whole bunch of what they had to offer. Everyone is in unanimous agreement that Australia is facing one of the most volatile strategic environments that we've been in since, realistically, the Vietnam War. Yet, we don't appear to be doing anything about it outside of saber-rattling.
And we will write you a letter telling you how angry we are.
And talking about it and acknowledging that it's a real thing. The government of the day, our current government and the previous government, so both sides of politics, have both talked about how no one has ever spent more in terms of raw dollars on defence expenditure in terms of capability, which makes sense. It's what inflation is all about. We're still spending 3% or sub 3% of our GDP on defence, and these guys are positing that that's not enough. If our strategic environment is truly as bad as what everyone is saying it is, then our defence spending should look something similar to the Vietnam era, where it was up around 18%. Now, I appreciate that logic, and I love a whole bunch of the policy recommendations that these guys were recommending, but they didn't tell me what we were going to sacrifice. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Unless the world is going to start paying so much more for Australians' iron ore, I don't know how we're going to fund all of these really cool capability pieces that these guys were suggesting. What hospital are you shutting down? What road are you not going to build? Are you just going to scrap all of the NDIS? Like, what is it that you're recommending to fund all of these policy recommendations? And so that was probably the biggest letdown for me. I was like nodding quite regularly. I was like, yeah, agreed. That would be amazing. That would be a more credible deterrent. Australia's pursuing a strategy of deterrence where if someone's going to reach out and touch the stove, we need you to know that it is in fact hot. We're not just going to let you reach out and do whatever it is that you want. We stand for something, and this is that line in the sand. There will be consequences if you step over it. Now, that might feel like a bit of a toothless tiger because we are a very small nation, highly capable in terms of our defense capability, but we so heavily rely on Big Brother, right, to come in and assist us and be part of that coalition of forces. And I think that's a reasonable assumption to make, is that we'd be part of a coalition if things did in fact hit the fan. However, what was the point that I was going to make? Strategy of deterrence. I'll move on. I'm now rambling. I could probably talk about this in a very bad way for a very long time. So let's rank this book. What did I decide? So I preferred this. It was a much easier read than Lawrence Freedman's epic on strategy. And I really liked what the gentleman had to offer, but you just didn't quite ground it in reality for me. Where are we getting this extra money? What is being sacrificed? Perhaps you will then respond and say that that's not your job. That's for government to figure out. Yeah, but no, government can't defend it, and they're not going to give up things because that loses them votes. But anyway, let's move on. The next book we have is The Medici Heist by Caitlin Schneiderhan. And this is, I guess you'd call it in the historical fiction genre. This is another Ocean's 11 style heist book. I was going to call it a movie. Why? Because my mind is on movies, because this will be a better movie than it is a book. So this one, as it says in the title, Medici, we are set in Florence in Renaissance Italy, where that very noble family, the Medicis, who just seem to be so much more holier than everybody else, having 4 popes, don't know how that works, where we're going to steal from them, because why not? Screw the man, right? That type of storyline. There's, again, another motley crew of people going together, quite an elaborate story that comes along with it, quite believable, quite enjoyable, but ultimately a little bit too samesies. There were two key female leads, and if I was to strip out every single one of the words that they spoke and just chucked them on a piece of paper and was told to, to itemize them, which character said what, I wouldn't be able to do it. So these two characters could have been the same character. And that was a bit of a letdown. I was like, nah, I'm wanting a little bit more depth here out of my characters. And it read kind of funny. No, not funny. It read exactly what the author's strength is. Caitlin is one of the authors from Stranger Things. And so she writes screenwrites. She writes a script. And that is exactly what it read like. It is a heavily dialogue-focused book, and it will get turned into a movie one day, and I'll watch the movie because it'll be a better movie than it was a book. But I almost didn't finish this. I started it twice, put it down, read another book, came back to it and was like, Nick, just have some discipline, just read the flipping book. And I read it and finished it. And ultimately it was enjoyable, not one that I'm going to read again. I will read almost every other book on this list again at some point in time. Not this one. The next book we have is a little novella, The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. And this is in the mystery or thriller genre. This is a short, sharp, very dark, holiday style, holiday vibe kind of book. We follow an American student as she's invited to the English countryside, to an English manor with one of her friends from university to come and spend the holidays with them. It starts off as a whole lot of fun. It's quite whimsical. And then it takes a pretty dark and sinister turn. And we explore all of this quite creatively through diary entries. This was the first book that I've read that has a lot of that, or at least is predominantly these diary entries. And it was fun. It was enjoyable. It had a couple of twists. It had a couple of turns. And it was only like 150 pages or something like that. Really quite enjoyable. A little palate cleanser. I can see myself reading more novellas as little palate cleansers throughout the year between these 1,100-page Sanderson behemoths. So it was good without being world-breaking. So let's go in here. B tier for The Christmas Guest by Peter Swanson. Which book you grabbing? Oh, you're going to grab the book now. All right, you do it. You go read a book and cry. My wife is reading, she's been watching The Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan. We've got the book. It's on my TBR over there, but I think my wife is going to TBR it before me. Is that right? Well, you can't talk to me about what happens because I will read that book. Narrow Road to the Deep North by Richard Flanagan, amazing Australian author in the literary fiction. It won, what book did it win? Not the Pulitzer Prize. What did it win? Man Booker Prize. Okay, you have to disappear because it's chewing into gigabytes. The next book we have is Poor Charlie's Almanac by Charlie Munger. And this is in the business or just worldly wisdom genre. Charlie Munger is the business partner, sidekick, lifelong friend of Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett is like the most successful investor of all time. Why? Because the dude's been doing it for 60 years, and that's what compound interest is all about. But Charlie Munger discovered many years ago that Warren has got this certain knack, he's got this gift, and he just attached his wagon straight on to Warren Buffett. Smartest decision anyone could have made. Charlie is super witty. He's now deceased, but you'll find him on the stage next to Warren with really witty remarks like, I have nothing further to add. This is what the dude said all the time. So when Charlie has put together an entire book, it's worth reading because he's a man of few words. So this book essentially is a combination of the speeches that Charlie has given, and it explores Charlie's multidisciplinary approach to life and investing. He pulls lessons to create this lattice work of mental models from psychology, from physics, from biology, from chemistry, from history. If there is a lesson to be learned, he will learn it and he will incorporate it into this lattice work of mental models so that he can apply it to the way in which he lives life, the rationality which he brings to life, or to his investing, to draw parallels, to see patterns in business models and different things. My channel is called The Renaissance Bookman, which is trying to say, I want to read broadly. I want to open myself up to everything that books have to offer. That's exactly what Charlie Munger does. And so he is a modern day Renaissance man. Most of this book, I'm simply not smart enough. I'm humble enough to acknowledge that I'm not nearly as smart as Charlie Munger. I'll just invest my money with someone like Charlie Munger. But the bits that I do comprehend and that I do understand, it's just really good. Like the dude is a genius, like an absolute genius. You should read this book. You will find lessons in it that you can apply to your life. I've seen it on heaps of people's list as one of the single best books, or the books that transform someone's life the most. Those people are probably showboating a little bit, because I don't know if anyone's intelligent enough to fully understand, comprehend, and then employ everything that Charlie Munger talks about. But geez, it's fun to be a fly on the wall of someone that intelligent. Kind of how I felt in reading Dickens's Tale of Two Cities. Geez, it's fun just marveling at how brilliant you are. So I didn't get as much out of it, but I will come back to this book. I reckon every couple of years I'll open it back up and I will have another crack and see how much I've learnt since the last time that I read it. So poor Charlie's Almanac. This is A tier, trying to figure out where it slots into here. Poor old Circe's dropping down the list. Circe was a much better read than that. So there we go, bringing Circe back up, but poor Charlie's Almanac fits into A tier. The next book is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett. And this is in the fantasy mystery genre. This book does two things. It sets for you a fantastical world, a fantasy world, and it's also a murder mystery. It's got a unique blend, and I'll be honest, it does both well enough. It doesn't do either perfectly, but it balances both to actually create, in the end, a really enjoyable reading experience. This murder mystery, we have a Sherlock, a very traditional Sherlock and Watson figures, with Anna and Din as the two characters that we follow, as they are going about trying to solve a standard sort of murder mystery with the twists and turns and ultimately a large reveal that you could have got to had you followed the Easter eggs all the way along. The world that we find ourselves in, it's this sort of peninsula where you've got these different rings of society as they make their way in, with the more noble and aristocratic being further away from water. Why? Because there's a giant leviathan living in the water that wants to come through and crash onto land and make its way across land, devouring all of society as it goes. And so the outer rim has got these massive walls, essentially. Picture like the Great Wall of China coming all the way around the sea wall, trying to protect people from these giant leviathans that want to come and kill people. Now, to do that, you have trait-based augmented people. It's probably not the right way to say it. People are augmented, but not augmented entirely, just one particular trait. So Din, for example, who is our Watson character, he has a perfect photographic memory. He uses smells to lock memories that he can then bring back out at a later stage, where he remembers absolutely everything about a scene that he is in. Everything people said, the way that they looked, the way that they smelt, what was written here, what was said there, and he can just go back and look at absolutely all of that in a photographic memory way. There's pretty good stakes. The world feels like it's about to crumble down at any moment. There's these deadly killer plants that are just like sprouting up on the inside of people. I'll give a slight little warning for body gore. The best part about this book, though, for me, is the witty banter between Anna and Din. Anna is a quirky Sherlock character, and Din is this dry neurodivergent. So he's on the spectrum somewhere, and the way in which these two interact with each other and their dialogue between those two, genuinely laughed out loud at different times. So this was a good book. I enjoyed this one. Where does it sit? It is A tier. It's not nearly as good as Circe, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. The world building was good enough. The character development was good enough. The murder mystery was good. And I really quite liked the magic system. This augmentation piece was quite cool. I really quite liked it. A tier from the first book in the Leviathan series. The second book in the Leviathan series, A Drop of Corruption by Robert Jackson Bennett, also in the fantasy mystery genre. This is the sequel to A Tainted Cup. You've got Anna and Din still as that Sherlock and Watson type. I didn't mention in the previous one of the downsides, I guess, or the thing that's lacking is you've got a great Sherlock, a terrific Watson, but you have no real Moriarty, or at least we haven't discovered them yet through book 1 or book 2. Who is the evil mastermind who is, battling of wits between that person and Sherlock? Like, that just doesn't quite exist, and I think that's one of the things that's lacking in this as well. I still don't quite know who the big bad is, and I'm not sure I ever will. Will I read beyond this one? Because I didn't enjoy this book nearly as much as I enjoyed the first. The thing that I loved about the first one is exploring some of that augmentation, and I feel like there was less of that. Maybe I might be wrong, but I feel like there was less of that in the sequel. And I really liked that witty banter between Anna and Din, and I feel like we got less of that. Instead, we just got this crude sexual banter from other characters to Din. And that's kind of not my cup of tea. I didn't enjoy that aspect of it nearly as much. I still liked the murder mystery aspect of this one, but probably not as much as the first one. So ultimately, it was a step back in almost every aspect. And that's where I'm like, nah, will I read the third book when the third book comes out? I probably will, but it won't go straight to the top of my TBR like this book did when I got to it. So let's rank this one. This one is B tier, and it's going to slide in right in the middle of B tier. The next book is Loving God by Charles Colson, and this is in the Christian non-fiction genre. This book is written by a former hatchet man of President Richard Nixon. Colson ended up going to prison due to his role in covering up the Watergate scandal. He was a lawyer, and he was one of the ones that covered up a whole bunch of the stuff that the Nixon administration was doing. And ultimately, when he was in prison, he found Christ. And it's him telling that story. And the title says that he should be telling us a little bit more about what it means to truly love God and living a life where we are loving God. I don't feel like it did that. Still a fun book. Why? Because he then went back and had a look at all of these real key historical figures and the way in which their faith played a role in what they were trying to do. There was an amazing story that he told about Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was the author of the Gulag Archipelago, which is one of the novels that broke out of the gulags, out of the Soviet Union, and shone a light to the rest of the world on what was taking place in what we now know as Russia, and ultimately ended up in the Soviet Union crumbling in the way that it did. Even if you're not a person of faith, the history in this book is really cool. Like I said, I feel like it didn't necessarily teach you how to love God anymore, but I enjoyed the history aspect of it. So for what it was trying to achieve, it was a bit of a letdown, but for the historical exploration of people's faith and the role that it played in achieving great feats and great deeds, yeah, really cool. So how do I balance that and where do I want to put it? It's ultimately going to end up probably back in the B tier, and it's going to slot right in there. Loving God by Charles Colson. The next book we have is Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir, and this is in the science fiction genre. So Ryland Grace wakes up in space, alone from a coma, and with no idea how he got there or what it is that he's trying to achieve. This is one of the first videos that I did, one of the first reviews that I did for this BookTube channel. This was a really enjoyable book, and I described it at the time as The Martian, but even more so. If you liked The Martian and everything that that book had to offer, the science, the wit, the humor, Ryland Grace provides all of that, but even more so. It's so much more enjoyable. And the key difference probably is the stakes. In The Martian, an individual's life was at risk and he was trying to survive against all odds. In Project Hail Mary, world is suffering an existential threat and the fate of society is at risk. So you just look at the scale and the stakes, and that is what elevates this book. We're turning this into a movie coming out in March of next year. Definitely go and watch that movie. That's going to be amazing. However, do not watch any of the trailers before you go and watch that movie. They give away a huge spoiler, and it's so much fun discovering that little piece when you're reading it in real time. I'm not going to say too much more here outside that this book is amaze. Project Hail Mary, it's S tier. Bring it on up. Is it better than Hero of Ages? I'm just going to rearrange all of S tier at the end. We'll see how that goes. The next book we have is The Hallmarked Man by Robert Galbraith. Yes, by J.K. Rowling under a different name. This is in a crime mystery genre. This is the latest installment in the Cormoran Strike Robin Ellicourt series. Cormoran and Robin, they are private detectives, and they manage to get some of the coolest cases and they go about chasing them down. As is the case with all of their books, not only are they discovering and giving this reveal on the one case, they discover like 8 other cases along the way and end up solving all of them in that final 100 pages as well. This book just frustrated me a little bit. It's a big chunker of a book, like 700 pages, and there is so much faff. Just because you're J.K. Rowling, I feel like your editor has let you down. You could have cut 150, almost 200 pages from this book, and it would have been even more impactful, because it would have been faster paced and you could have got through it. The final 100 to 150 pages was really good and really enjoyable, but man, there was a whole bunch of fat in between. Perhaps you don't need to describe to me the amount of times that people will go to a restaurant or go to a pub to get something to eat. And then don't spend all of these other pages complaining that you can't afford real estate in London. Meal prep, people. Meal prep. You are eating out every single day of the week. I get to hear about your breakfast that you went and had, that you picked up on the way to work. We then go to a pub and have fish and chips again, despite you being on a diet. And then we go out for dinner and we end up going to some fancy restaurant and having a 3-course meal with some member of parliament. Meal prep. At least just eat one of these meals at home and perhaps you can afford that flat that you can't quite afford to live in. Rant over. I'll probably cut that when I get to it. But little things just frustrated me. One thing that this book did do really well, though, it dealt with suicide and suicidal ideation really well. particularly the latter. I am in a position of management, and every now and then I am in a really difficult position where I have to talk to people that are having a real rough time. And perhaps it was just due to the timing, but there is a real key moment where Cormoran Strike has got a whole bunch of stresses going on in his life. Very believable, very real, and you can understand. And he has this moment where he has suicidal ideation, where he just comments as he's going about his life, where he sees a bus coming the other way, how easy it would be to step in front. And then he just continues on and continues with his life. That felt really real. I'm not someone that has gone through it, but what people that I have been talking to that have described, it's like that, or at least it was like that for them. So when I read this, man, it hit me like a sledgehammer. And it reminded me that J.K. Rowling is a really good storyteller, just needs a better editor at this point in time in her career. This book probably, if you're someone who has struggled with your mental health, just be aware that this book is going to explore a whole lot of characters that have got issues with their mental health. So much so, like, I got to a point where I was like, is it too rich if I try and reach out to J.K. Rowling just to ask if she's okay? Like, this book is not fun. I can't imagine you would be in a fun place in writing this either. Like, is this what's just coming out from her life at this point in time? Because that's no fun. I don't want to read that. Like, someone needs to go give her a hug. That's just how constant it was in terms of these themes. So despite all of that, the fat that was in this book, man, it was just frustrating to try and get through. What do we got here? Robert Galbraith. Did I say this was D? I did say this was D. It's heaps better than Medici Heist. But yeah, D tier. I've read like 7 or 8 of these now. Do I keep reading? The next book is Turn the Ship Around by David Marquet, and this is in the leadership genre. This was a reread for me. Why? Because I wanted to do a BookTube video on the single best leadership book that I've ever read, and that is this book. David Marquet was a Navy captain who was put in charge of the worst performing nuclear submarine in the fleet. And by the time that he left, he instilled a new leadership culture, one that went away from the leader-follower model into a leader-leader model. He pushed decision-making authority as far down the chain of command as he would. He removed bureaucracy. Any of these just absolute naff levels of management in between, he just ripped them all out and created this new model. And within 3 years, he went from having the worst performing submarine in the fleet to the best performing submarine in the fleet. But what was really impactful, 10 years after he had left, that submarine was still winning best submarine in the fleet due to the difference in culture and the difference in leadership style that managed to stay beyond his tenure. What a legacy. I loved this book because it had the most actionable things that you and I can actually do, that we can implement as leaders, as middle level managers, as people leading groups of volunteers, a whole bunch of things. This was a really good book. It didn't just talk real airy fairy premise, it was actionable, and I have implemented a whole bunch of these things in my everyday life. I've changed the way in which I lead my family as a result of the things that David Marquet talked about. If you are a leader, read this book. Ignore the rest of the naff. Read this book. And so this book is S tier for me, single best leadership book that I've ever read. All right, next, we're jumping into the lit RPG that's up behind here, Dungeon Crawler Carl by Matt Dinnerman in the lit RPG genre. Lit RPG, what is it? It's literary role-playing game. There is a huge game mechanic to everything that we're doing in this book. If you've ever played a game where you've got particular skills and an inventory and a health bar and chat boxes that pop up, that's what you are doing, but through a book. And so you are discovering the different stats that different people have and how that works and pulling things into their inventory that you can later use in a really creative way. It's a whole lot of fun. I had no idea this genre existed, and this is amazing. This is so much fun. This is pleasure reading at its best. So how does this all work? So Carl, Dungeon Crawler Carl is an ex-Coast Guard. He's the everyday man. He was stuck outside wearing his boxer shorts with little hearts on them, trying to retrieve his girlfriend's cat when aliens just destroyed the world. Everyone that was indoors all died in an instant and created this 18-level tiered dungeon game system underneath the surface of the earth, where if you survive all levels, then you are Lord Ruler of whatever is left of Earth, or you just die on the way. And so that is the world that we find ourselves in. The cat, Princess Donut, ends up becoming sentient and is one of the coolest characters ever. Pure sass, really witty, and just behaves as you would expect a cat to behave, just looking after themselves and their own. And Carl is just grinding. He's got great agency as well. He's not perfect, but he's pretty elite, and that might be a bit of an issue. Just kind of wins at most things that he does, not in the standard way in which you think, very A-Team-esque, where they get to at the end of it. And he's like,
I love it when a plan comes together.
You get those kind of vibes as well from Carl, but he's generally winning and succeeding. This is a crazy, crazy book. If you're not sure, based on the description that I've just given, just do yourself a favor and go listen to the audiobook. Jeff Hayes, the narrator of the audiobook, is all time. He is amazing. Do yourself a favor and just go listen to that.
God damn it, Donut. We need to talk before we do stuff like that. You don't even know what you're doing yet.
Relax, Carl. I've been reading the help section of the Warlords tab.
Wait, really? When did you get the time?
I don't use the restroom nearly as much as you do.
And then come back and read should you so desire it. You're getting no judgment from me if you just listen to every single one of them. I read 6 Dungeon Crawler Carl books in 2025. I spent more word count on Matt Dinnerman than any author in the entire year. The first book, Dungeon Crawler Carl, this was S tier for me. Where does it fit in? It was so enjoyable, I'll leave it there to begin with. The next book that we have is Carl's Doomsday Scenario by Matt Dinnerman, also in the lit RPG genre. This is book 2. We find ourselves in a city world and we're introduced to more NPCs, the non-player characters. And we start to explore some different things. This is more leveling up. This is grinding, as you would expect, where you're just trying to get to fight the bigger boss guy. And so you've just got to level up, go off and hustle and find your way through here. This book wasn't as good as what the first book was. It was a whole bunch of fun, but I'm actually going to slide this one all the way down into B tier. Exactly why, I can't remember. So it feels rough putting it there because some of the others were so much more enjoyable. All right. Next one. We've got the Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook by Matt Dinnerman, the lit RPG genre. This is book 3 in the series. This one was really challenging because of the world. This is the Iron Tangle, the very and far too complex train map. And ultimately, this was a bit of a letdown because I just couldn't follow it. I just couldn't visualize it like I could the previous 2. And so this is where I found it really quite challenging. There were some real positives. We were introduced to Katia in a big way, and we loved the character that she became. Princess Donut became more and more sassy. And Carl became a little bit more creative. He got the Anarchist Cookbook, which was basically the cheat sheet, right? Who doesn't love playing a game and getting hold of the cheat sheet? And anyone who... Age of Empires. This was the equivalent of just typing pepperoni pizza time and time again, or steroids, or... I can't remember what it was. What a little priest, the hoyo, hoyo, hoyo. I can't remember. Big Daddy was another one, the Big Bertha, all of these sorts of things. The Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook essentially is that sheet of paper where you can just type all of these cheat codes in for Age of Empires. So that's a whole lot of fun, but this was a step back largely due to that far too complex world. So I'm sorry, this one's going to come all the way back down to C. Enjoyable for a whole bunch of reasons, but man, it was hard to follow. The next one we've got is book 4, which is The Gate of the Feral Gods by Matt Dinnerman, lit RPG genre. This is where we saw the worlds just expand. We had these massive bubble worlds and we were introduced to gods, or at least demigods, minor gods, whatever they ended up being. This is where the character development really started coming through. You started to see a little bit more of the determination, like, you will not break me. Carl becomes a heck of a lot more fun for me. You get a lot more side characters starting to come in, and they have depth, they have personality, they have differences as well. Katia, again, is a huge strength throughout this book. Gate of the Feral Gods was better again. We're coming back to A tier. I'm just going to slot that right in the middle of A tier for Gate of the Feral Gods. The next one, book 5, The Butcher's Masquerade by Matt Dinnerman in a lit RPG. Carl has always had a lot of agency. That's been a strength of these books. But it was in this book that he became a strategic mastermind, the likes we have not seen since Homer wrote of Odysseus. Okay, that's a slight exaggeration. The way that he handles this level is really quite fun. And man, you're rooting for him. Like, you're rooting for him on every single level. But in this one, you're like, yes, kill them all, dude. Like, get after it. He becomes pretty ruthless at times. And the interactions that he has with the other characters as a result of how ruthless he gets is a whole lot of fun. But Donut is a clear winner, a clear strength of this book. Her character, she just gives so much personality. You get a really cool final scene at the Masquerade Ball. Epic battle scene. There's a real gut punch in there as well. If you know, you know. This one was my favorite. Butcher's Masquerade is my favorite in the Dungeon Crawler Carl series. It comes all the way back up to S tier. And finally, we have The Eye of the Bedlam Bride by Matt Dinnerman in the lit RPG genre. This has got something in it for anyone who liked their deck building games. Think Yu-Gi-Oh! And think Pokemon, that type of deck building where you fight through the cards that you have. The scale of this one is epic. She Maria is a really cool character and really dark as well. And you find both Carl and Donut making some really challenging decisions in this one. This is a whole lot of fun. I liked this one. This was S tier again. And so I'm just going to slide it all the way back up in there. I'll figure out what S tier looks like in time. So that is like a fast pace, like bam, straight through Dungeon Crawler Carl. These are great fun. Where they sit, probably the only one that I feel really confident with is Butcher's Masquerade being my favorite out of all of them, and Dungeon Anarchist Cookbook being the least favorite of the books that I've read. I've read 6 of them. That was the best one. That was the worst one. Where do they all sit? Doesn't really matter. Flip and read these books. These are great fun. If you like enjoyment, if you like having fun, you should read these books. That's my pitch to everybody. All right, next up, we have Rule Breaker Investing by David Gardner, and this is in the finance or investing self-help genre. Now, David Gardner, for anyone that doesn't know him, he's one of the founding fathers behind the Motley Fool. Now, if that's immediately turning you off and you're wanting to skip, just hold out. I've already talked about how Warren Buffett is probably the greatest investor to have ever lived. There are a few others that have got better returns, but his approach to it is more repeatable from our perspective. David Gardner is probably the best investor in the last 25 years. This is someone who has 7 100 baggers to their name. What is a 100 bagger? It's an investment where it goes up 100 times its initial value. So it's something where you spend $10,000 initially and that turns into $1 million. He has 7 of these. All 7 of those completely cover every other investing mistake that you have ever made prior to this point. It is long-term investing. It is buying into amazing companies and not interrupting them. That is his secret sauce. This book is like so optimistic. And that is probably the thing that's going to grind on you a little bit is, man, David Gardner is optimistic. Mind you, if I was worth as many millions of dollars as what he is, and if I had found 7 100 baggers, I'd probably be pretty optimistic as well. So I can't begrudge the man, but it's at times a little bit corny. As a result of that, he is a card-carrying capitalist. He is a believer in American dominance and American excellence, and he is not backwards in coming forward. He has made all of his money in believing in this, so why would he? He hasn't been given any reason to doubt. And so what this book is, it's him outlining the 6 things that he looks for, the 6 rules that he looks for in a rule breaker company. The examples that he looks at are things like Amazon. It was doing something completely different. Tesla, Netflix, Nvidia is a modern day rule breaker. Now, it's very easy just to cherry pick and pick all of the best companies that sort of exist right now, but these are all the companies that he invested in. So far out, if he's got a system that he uses to find all of these ones, you know what? As a stock picker, it's worth looking at these. Even if I don't have the same level of conviction that he has, he's got a whole bunch of great little pithy one-liners that are great. Like, what is your sleep number? Don't put an arbitrary 5% or a 10% on. When does it prevent you from sleeping at night? So this is a good book. It's just a little optimistic. Even for me, I am an optimist, and this book was challenging. Oh, I'm grabbing it all out there. Rule Breaker Investing. So it's B tier. I'm going to slide it right in to there. Looks like a pretty good spot. Next up, we have At the Stroke of Midnight by Jenny Keir, and this is in the historical fiction genre. This is a book that I would not normally read. It fell into my inbox and I liked the look of it, and so I bought it, and I don't regret it. I read this one on Kindle and it was good. We're set in the 1920s, and it follows a young girl, Pearl, and her father as they receive a mysterious invite to a dinner party for an entire weekend. Ultimately, they decide to go, which is the first thing that gets Pearl's sort of shackles up a little bit. She's like, this is unusual. And then she gets there to discover a whole bunch of other people have also been invited, but the host is not yet there. And she then discovers that her father has connections with all of these other people, but they're denying it. She ends up running away from the house, has this interaction with this random Mercury in a clock, and she is stuck in Groundhog Day. She is replaying the same day over and over. The catch is there is a massive house fire, and everyone, including herself, dies in the house fire. So she is reliving this day. Can she figure out who it is, which one of these guests that she's just met is responsible for the house fire? Why? Why are they all there? Can she stop it? Can she change the outcome of this individual day, or will she continue to die every single night? It's a murder mystery type, and what's fun is each night we get this Poirot-style reveal where she gets to go, haha, this is what happened, and this is who the guilty person is. And then all of a sudden flames erupt around them and everybody dies. Okay, it was not that person. And she retains her memories from each day, which is also important. So this is a whole lot of fun. And some days she's like, stuff it. I'm just going to die again tonight. So I'm going to go and have fun and explore today. It's a simple read. It's not going to challenge you. It's fun. It's lighthearted. And it's got a nice couple of little twists along the way as well. I haven't read any other of Jenny Keir's work, but I might. If I discover something else and I'm on a holiday, I think this is a holiday type read. And so I could easily pick this up and you will read it inside 3 days. Very easy read, non-offensive, very different from everything else that I've read this year. Whatever the marketing was that managed to get it into my inbox, well done. You got yourself a sale that you would not have otherwise got. I genuinely really enjoyed this. This is A tier. Oh, is that generous? Probably. Oh, I've got it there now. That's great. A tier at the stroke of midnight. Next, we have an absolute epic of a tale. It is Dune by Frank Herbert, and this is in the epic sci-fi genre. We all know the storyline to this book. We have, at a minimum, we've all watched the first 2 movies that have come out, and they were just epic, right? How good were they? And it brings me so much joy to say that the book was better. The book was so much better than the movie. This was so much fun. Why? The character development. The world building was done in a better way, and the character development was so much better in the book. We got so much more out of Gurney Halleck. We so much more. In fact, we got less from Duncan Idaho, I would suggest, in the book in comparison to the movie, which was kind of unusual. But Lady Jessica was a cooler character. Chani was such a better character in the book in comparison to the movie. Paul was a different type of person as well. His mentat abilities was barely touched on in the movies at all, or at least that's my perception of it, whereas that was a huge part of the books. There was just a whole bunch of things that were just really enjoyable. It's a slower paced book. You get the time to build the world, build the society, understand the Fremen people so much more. This was really good. If you like the movies, take the time, go read the books. This is epic. This is amazing. I can understand why people say that Dune is sci-fi's version of Lord of the Rings. I totally get it. This is an amazing book. Enough about this. Read this book. It's coming up to S tier. I'm going to slide it right at the top of S tier, and that's probably appropriate where it's going to sit. It was not the best book that I read this year. Golden Sun was, but it was the second best book that I read this year. I'm so sure of it. All right. How's the stamina going, Nick? I'm coming towards the end of this one. Next book, we have The Thursday Murder Club by Richard Osman, and this is in the mystery genre. This was another lighthearted read. This was a holiday summer style read. We've got a peaceful retirement village, and we've got 4 random characters that would not have otherwise been hanging out together if not for a retirement village. They form the Thursday Murder Club, where every Thursday they get together and they try and solve cold cases until someone dies in amongst them, and they get to actually work with the police or work against the police, depends which way you want to look at it, and solving an actual murder. What's weird about this book is doesn't become 1 murder. I think it becomes 3 or 4 by the time the book is done. Spoilers on that one. People just start dying all over the place, and these guys are right in the thick of it. You get 4 really distinct characters, and the writing style, as you bounce between the point of view for each of these characters, changes quite a bit, which makes for a really interesting prose. Some of them are a bit ditzy, some of them are just outright engineers, and others are really quite crafty, ex-MI5 agents or something similar. There's probably 1 or 2 too many twists for my liking. I'm like, okay, all right, another one. Another twist, okay. And like I said, people just keep dying, and you're just like, okay, get to the end of this, because it's not actually a big book, so a lot happens pretty darn quickly. It's good fun, but notably, I have not read another, and I think there's like 5 of them that are out at this point in time, and my wife did buy me the 2nd or the 3rd book as well, and I haven't yet picked it up. That probably says everything we need to know. I tried to watch the movie. The book was better than the movie. The movie felt a little bit disjointed because it tried to incorporate all of those twists that came along with it. 1 less twist, and you probably got a better quality book in the end. So where does this one sit? I'm going to slide it right into the middle of C tier. The next book we have, and this is a doozy, this is a really good one. The Expectation Effect by David Robson, and this is in the psychology or the self-improvement genre. David Robson is a neuroscientist. He is a mathematician. He is a study of all things science. And one of his latest things is all around the brain. The brain, as he posits, is a prediction machine. There is too much going on. There are too many inputs for us in our brain to be synthesizing all of that and making rational decisions every single moment. We are too quick to make decisions. How do we make decisions that fast? It's because our brain is a prediction machine. It's seeing patterns and it's going, we saw this yesterday. this was the outcome. But if we know that the brain is a prediction machine, then we can use it to our advantage. And it goes a long way to explaining the placebo effect and the nocebo effect. If you think something, it is far more likely to be true. You can think yourself into an action. One of the really cool examples that he gave in this one was a girl that had suffered from migraines. And this really hit home for me because my wife suffers from migraines and we were about to start a new medication. I'll show you how I used what I learned in this book to great effect with my wife's treatment. So the example that he gives in this book is that this poor lady had suffered from migraines, chronic migraines, where she would lock herself away in a room. She was really sensitive to light and she would be in complete utter darkness, blackout blinds everywhere. Her husband would have to let her know and she'd bury her head underneath a pillow as he would come in to try and feed her food, and she's stuck in her room for weeks at a time. She taught her brain that light equals pain, so much so that her brain was like, I've got you. And he cut away all light sources completely. The eyes were still working, but the brain was refusing to incorporate light. And so there was nothing wrong with her eyes, but she became legally blind. She could not see anything because her brain was like, oh, light equals pain. No worries. We're just going to cut that away completely. And so through a whole bunch of tests, they discovered that, hey, this is actually you've taught your brain to do this. We now need to unteach your brain, teach your brain that it's okay light is okay. Light isn't the dangerous thing here. It's the other stuff that we're trying to treat. And so 12 months later, through a whole bunch of therapy, she was able to gain her eyesight back. And it showed the power of the brain. The other aspect of it as well, before I get to the story that I have, just by knowing the side effects, you are now more likely to experience them. Whereas if you take a drug thinking that there are 0 side effects, you are statistically less likely to experience any side effects. Why? Because your brain is already anticipating the side effect being there and it starts actually happening. Whether or not it was going to happen or not is irrelevant because your brain has decided, oh yeah, you are going to get headaches for this one. No, you will feel nauseous. Why? Because that is a common side effect that affects 80% of people. We're going to be one of those 80%. Here's the nausea for you. So my wife also suffers from migraines. And so leading up to a new treatment that we had, I was just reading this book and I was like, okay, I'm going to use some of this. I'm going to see if I can hardwire her brain into thinking a certain outcome. And so I did a bunch of research. And so I would come to her every single night and I'd be like, hey, I've been looking into this. I think this could be really successful. Everyone that I'm reading here has had terrific results from this medication. Like it's solving all of these people. This lady here, can you see, like she returned to full-time work. This person here continued to play tennis, like all of these things. And I was just like being really optimistic, just emphasizing all these positive things, just reinforcing the fact that, hey, this medication is an absolute miracle. It will cure you. There is no reason to need to be scared and have any other migraines. And the best thing here is like no one got any side effects. Isn't this amazing? And do you know what happened? My wife hasn't had a single migraine since we started taking the medication. Absolutely amazing. I have no idea if it is the medication itself or if it's me using what I learned from the expectation effect and then the fact that the brain is a prediction machine to great effect. But I don't particularly care because it's had an amazing outcome. It's had an amazing influence on my wife's life and my family's life. She hasn't had a single migraine in the 6 months since she started this medication. So you need to read this book. This is an amazing book. I will come back to this probably every 18 months or so to make sure that I am doing the things that this book says to do. So let's get it up here. This book is S tier. Throw it up there somewhere there. We'll figure that out later. S tier, The Expectation Effect. Amazing. All right, getting to the tail end. Next, we have Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and this is in the psychology genre. This is an amazing book. You know, when you discover a book and you incorporate what it has to say and it completely changes your life. That was Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning for me. I read this in my early 20s, and who knows, early 20s can be a really challenging time as you're discovering who you are, what you want to do. You're dealing with setbacks. You're away from the nest probably for the first time in a long time, and it's all on you. I read this book then, and it gave me amazing perspective. Perspective is now my secret sauce, but this book is awesome. The biggest thing to take from this one is that no matter what people do to you, no matter the freedoms that people take from you, the one thing that people can never take is your attitude, the way in which you choose to respond to setback, the way that you choose to respond to any given situation. No one can change that about you. That is your choice. You have control over that. When all hope is lost in all other things, you have control over the way you respond to a certain situation. That is really freeing. If you can control that and just embody that, it comes back to that Nietzsche quote. You can withstand almost any how. So Viktor Frankl was a Jewish man. He was a learned gentleman who found himself in a concentration camp during World War II. And he chronicles things that he did, things that he saw whilst in there. And he explores logotherapy, which is his unique brand of, I guess, philosophy that he brings to the psychology space. And a lot of it is finding purpose in suffering. This was a really good book. If you're actually, not even if you're struggling, just freaking read this book. This is amazing. Let's not beat around the bush. This is S tier. That's coming all the way up to here for me. S tier is getting quite broad there, and that's going to ruin the imagery a little bit. That's okay. S tier for Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Last up, two books that were absolute epic reads for me. The Will of the Many by James Islington, and this is in the fantasy genre. We all know The Will of the Many. If you don't, it's amazing. It's this Roman-inspired fantasy novel in which the magic system doesn't stand alone as this awkward thing. It's built into the way that society is structured. And that is straight out as a pyramid structure where people are ceding their will, their life force, their strength, their intellect, their soul to others. And they're doing so willingly and also not so willingly, where the many are ceding their will up that pyramid to empower the few. And the few are then responsible for managing all of the public transport systems, managing all of the complex things. Why? Because they got like 44,000 people imbuing will into them. So they are walking around like demigods capable of doing a whole bunch of things. So not only can you imbue your will into people, you can imbue your will into other objects. So that's the world that we find ourselves. It's Roman inspired. What do I mean by that is you've got these three real clear, distinct factions. You've got military, religion, and governance and the way that they work. They've got their own individual pyramids that are structured within those as well. And we follow a young boy named Viz. There's a whole lot of three-letter character names here. We've got Din, Vin, Viz. Darrow's like the odd one out here. But Viz in this one, he is undercover in a whole bunch of ways. A whole bunch of people have talked about this. I've talked about this ad nauseum. It's a really fun book. Leans heavily into tropes, but that's okay because it becomes a really comfortable read. You've become like they're a trope for a reason. It doesn't necessarily break any new ground in the first book, but it's done really well. I loved the world, loved the magic system, loved the character development. You start to fall in love with these characters. He's a little bit too competent sometimes, young Viz, but you're rooting for him. And the stakes are super high because he's undercover three different ways. Every conversation can be his downfall, and that brings with it really high stakes. This is a fun book. I can't emphasize this enough. I read this just after I read the first Mistborn, rather before I just read the first Mistborn, and this is a better book. The Will of the Many. Let's bring it on up. This sits definitely in front there. Sliding. Let's go. The Will of the Many by James Islington. I think I said Islington again. I'm sorry, James. Fellow Australian, I should be getting this right. I once lived in a little suburb called Islington, and so I just naturally fall back on that one. James Islington. Don't beat me up in the comments, guys. You've already done that in another video. James Islington. The Will of the Many. This is S tier. And finally, we have Strength of the Few, the follow-up to The Will of the Many in the Hierarchy series by James Islington. And this is also in the fantasy genre. This was an epic follow-up. This is a real heavy, plot-driven, action-orientated story. The scope gets so large. I'm going to stay away from spoilers on this one, but you've got the same world, a more in-depth magic system. Multiply that bad boy by 3, and that's the type of magic system that we now encounter in the second book. The second book falls backwards from the first just due to the character development. Because they do so much more world building, so much more exploration of will and the magic system, that you have to sacrifice something, and the character development is the thing that you sacrifice. There are too many characters from the first book that were just dead in the water, just gone and forgotten. Characters that I absolutely loved from the first book, and that's where they stayed. And that was a little bit disappointing. The new characters that we introduced just didn't do it for me to the same degree as those in the first book. But ultimately, this was still a really enjoyable book. That's the reason why it's no longer S tier. It was just due to the sacrifices we had to make in the character development. but the world building was pretty epic. Like, I loved the world building. Some people have thrown shade on it, and I'm like, no. Well done, James Islington, for being as bold as what you were to go after a novel like this. Really ambitious, and I'm really happy for him. It was good. I thoroughly enjoyed this. So let's go and grab it. This was A tier. Let's slide it all the way up. I like where that's sitting already. So that's my reading year. I hope that's 40. If that's not 40, I've dropped one off the list, but that's okay. So let's have a little rearrange. Golden Sun was the single best book that I read all year. I can't say anything more about it than that. Golden Sun was so good. Peak Darrow, Peak Severo. Dune was amazing. So much better than the book. Paul Atreides, Chani, such a cool character. Gurney Halleck, he sits on Mount Rushmore with me, with Sarzed, for the best fictional characters. You know what? Severo's probably right there with him. Severo, who would win in a fight? Severo, Gurney Halleck, or Sarzed? Let's do that. I'm going to do a video on that at some point in time. I'm just going to grab all these other random characters from different books. I'm looking forward to that. Man's Search for Meaning. This book has impacted my life probably like no other book. It's given me so much perspective, and it's changed the way in which I live. I'm such a more resilient individual, more confident person as a result of this book. The Will of the Meaning, so good. Morningstar. God, that was such a good book. It's so hard given, yep. You know, I'm going to leave that S tier. That's fine. I like the top end of here. Oh, I've nailed this. Nailed A. B. Well of Ascension was such a good book. How are we going? You know what? I like it. Nailed it first time. That's exactly the way I like it. Thank you so much for being here. Let me know in the comments, what did I get right? What did I get grossly wrong? Is it sacrilege to have Well of Ascension all the way down in B? Should Red Rising be sitting in A, given how much I talk about it and given the amount of hairs that I now have in my chest as a result of reading this book? This was an epic list. 2025 was an all-time reading year. I'm looking forward to 2026. I've already started off really strong. John Gwynn, I love your work. Really enjoying that one. That's sitting in those top 2 tiers already. Enough of my random Aussie accented ramblings. Until next time, ciao.